What are your initials?
Law.
Law, yes, good. Yes. Excellent. All right. I love extracting zip files. All right. So, ooh, nice. Is this a noise texture on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's just like one of the basic.
Yeah. Oh, I recognize a noise texture unless it's heavily modified. All right. So which texture was showing up really dark?
The string.
Okay.
You can kind of see it there.
Oh yeah. So, all right. Let me. Use texture. All right. Did you? What am I doing right now? Sorry. Okay. Okay. So here's like your stone. Here's your thing, and then is any of this black part supposed to be for the? Sorry. For the area up here, or is that just its own? Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha.
You can see them.
Ah, yes, indeed, I can. So probably I would imagine that one of the reasons that this is appearing not necessarily dark, but it looks like what's happening is this is still like a pretty. I mean, first of all, the UVs are overlapping, but also this is a very small area of pixels to be stretched into this area of space. So you want to, like, it is definitely a little bit blurry when you look at it. Like, even if you go up close here, like, this is kind of low res. And then that's just being amplified by having it stretched here. So I think that's one of the reasons that the texture might not be showing up as clearly as you expect. So I'm gonna try something really quick and just cut this weird section of UVs out and just scale it up to see what happens. All right, that 100% doesn't make it lighter, but it does make it slightly less blurry looking. All right, let me see. Center surface 9. All right, so you mapped color. The other thing you could do is change I don't know why it defaults the weight to 0.8. Usually it's fine, but like if you bump that up to 1, sometimes it'll make the color a little bit truer to what the PSD is. In this case, it did lighten it ever so slightly. And did you have any other? All right. All right. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head why that would be appearing darker than you expected. My next thought would be like maybe the lighting just isn't quite bright enough or something. If I... Lord help me. Ah. God. I clicked render and now the computer is like lagging really hard. Oh, that was actually really fast. Yes, I mean, one thing, I would probably just lighten it in the PSD. I mean, it seems like it's showing up relatively true, kind of, to color. Sort of. This PSD, this is weird. Looked at your... Yeah, that's weird. But it's totally showing up in whatever file you're actually referencing, so whatever. But yeah, I might just lighten it a little bit in the PSD. Also, I think if this is supposed to be like a sort of velvety texture, adding a slight bump map might also help with that. But yeah, I think the other thing that that might have been nice for this is to have not a default noise texture for the bump map, where possible. Mostly just. It's one of those things where like after you start modeling and like using and texturing for a while, like you can totally recognize a default noise texture pretty much anywhere. It's kind of awful, but like I love default noise textures, but if you don't modify them, it's like really obvious that it's just a default noise texture. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if that really answered your question, but like I said, I would probably just lighten this slightly, and call it a day.
Yeah.
did you have any other questions about your project?
How do you said modify the default texture, like the default noise texture? How would you go about doing that?
Yes. So, if I go down here to geometry. All right, so I'll go down to geometry. Also, so I noticed like this. Wait for it. Oh, weird. Okay. Interesting. So the other thing I actually just noticed is that all of your your different metals are all using different standard surface shaders. So like your rope is 9, this is 8, this is 7. If you do it like this, it's actually not that there's anything wrong with it per se, but if you're going to make it all different textures, there's really no point in making a color map for your stuff, because it kind of, I mean, like at that point you could just make this, just change the color to like this sort of goldy color. But yeah, so part of the reason, possibly less relevant in animation, definitely more relevant in games, but like the more textures you have, the more draw calls and stuff your computer has to make, the more calculations it has to do to pull information from those different files. So if you can limit the number of shaders that you have, it'll help to render things more efficiently in Engine. Again, mostly for gaming, less of an issue for animation, because usually you can just sit and let your stuff render, but just like kind of a weird efficiency thing. Anywho, so you asked about the noise texture. So if I'll go into your little pink gem thing, and I'll just click into this little arrow by the color channel, and that should, oh wait, sorry. I'll go down to your noise, I'll click into the arrow by your bump map texture, and then that should take me into here, which is like this noise 1. And if you can pretty much like fiddle with all of these values. Like all of these sliders will change the way your thing behaves. Mostly what I end up using is like frequency ratio. You can see that'll make it like a little bit finer. You can also fiddle with like frequency, just sort of makes it, I don't really know how to describe it, but like basically just like fiddle with these guys and find something that you like. The other thing I'll use a lot is like, you can play with density. This is good like if you just need, you know, a few little dots on something. This might be good for like a cookie or like a bread or maybe an ice cream texture, kind of, sort of. Fiddle with like randomness, stuff like that. If you set the randomness to 0, it just makes it this really awkward, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's like just a really awkward little grid. The other thing you can also fiddle with is the color balance, which in all honesty I find insanely awkward in noise textures, but you can do that, and you can see it sort of changes how things display up here. It just doesn't, like, again, what I think is kind of an awkward way, but yeah. You can also invert it, like if you want black to be white or white to be black, etc. And it'll just invert that. But yeah, I mean, most of the stuff for like Maya's checker textures and all that stuff have these settings here that you can fiddle with. You can usually change the color of them. And then again, if you go into, I think I showed you guys this last week, but if you go into this place 2D texture node up here, you can see repeat U and repeat V. If you modify them, it'll just pretty much loop the texture excuse me, multiple times on your on the model itself. So like when I set that to 10, it basically just takes the same texture and squishes it down, repeats it 10 times in the UV space. So it appears smaller and denser. But yeah. Any more questions about that? Yep. Remind me if you're still interested. I have, on one of the other files I'm going to use today, I have like an eye texture that I did just with nesting different Maya textures within each other. It was weird. But yeah, so I mean, I think overall this looks pretty good. I might have, I mean, now that you know how to like fiddle with the noise texture, I might go back and do that if you wanted to do a resubmit, and then like refine some of the textures on the band here. Incidentally, actually, if you're going to leave this as a separate texture, you could actually just make a larger, higher resolution file just for this chord, and that would probably help with some of the graininess as well. Um, wait. But yeah. So anyone else want to volunteer their projects? Hmm?
Question. So I created a light bulb,
Mhm.
and I added a specular to like the top portion of the light bulb, but that like made it really really dark. And I tried to make the light bulb illuminate, but it didn't
Okay.
illuminate. So
Um,
just wondering how would I like edit the specular for the textures in which like he can.
yeah.
My initials are AMS.
Yes. Just unzipping very slowly. Um, yeah, I can look at that. Were you using refraction in your bulb or like transmission?
I tried. I
Okay.
added in a ramp map.
I see.
A ramp thing.
Yeah.
That makes it transparent.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can look at that.
Find a way for like the point light to shine inside of the bulb, and I'm like, why aren't you shining?
Ah, okay.
Just wondering if there's a way that I could edit that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll look at that. Give it like 10 more seconds. It'll probably ends up by then. But yeah, a lot of times so if you were using refraction on your final renders, a lot of times that'll make stuff behave kind of weirdly. But I'm actually super curious now.
And also a question.
Mhm.
Like if you didn't want things to clip through each other, yeah,
Yes.
that's the problem. The filament was illuminated, but the bulb part did not. Although you were showing in the walls, but not in
I
the
see.
bulb.
I maybe have ideas to fix this. I'll look at your render and see what I can come up with. But yeah, so what were you saying with you were saying clipping something?
Yes. So if you had like two different objects, part of one whole object, how do you like? Is it bad to have them clipping, and how would you combine them? Make them clip.
I see. I assume you're talking about like the glass bulb versus like this metal bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, yeah. So, I mean, my first thought is like your renders look pretty cool. Is this just like a generic serial number?
No, it's actually on the bulb.
That's dedication. I probably would have just wrote like a random message here, like this is a random serial number, yay. Yeah, okay, so, let me look at your, am I looking at week 5 texturing for real?
Yes.
Okay. Version 10. No, I feel your pain. Alright, so in this case, it looks like there's some perhaps issues with your geometry being non-manifold at the bottom here. Yeah, which I think is just a matter of these edge loops not being combined. So if I do an edit mesh merge on this, you can see it'll smooth out. Like if you look before I did it, it's like it has all this pulling because these verts aren't connected. So if I, again, just do edit mesh and merge, it'll merge all those guys, and that should fix any issues you were having with like non-manifold geometry if you tried to fix your UVs. But yeah, so I think what I would do for this is probably, like in this instance, it doesn't need to be super crazy fancy, but what I'd probably do is try to avoid the clipping, like where it's clipping through the side of this object like really clearly. Like if it clips on the inside, I 100% don't really care unless I can see it really obviously. But I'd probably just like drag this down a little. Did I extrude that? I did. Cool. So I'd probably just like drag this down a little bit and maybe scale it down just so it's like, it's still clipping, but like not too badly. Just like, that kind of looks good, right? So I'd probably just bring it down to there, maybe like the start of these little threads. And then what I would do is I will grab this whole object and I will just extrude it and push this extrude in. And what this will do is it's pretty much the easiest way to model like glass geometry if you're doing any kind of like water bottles or anything like that where it has just a little bit of thickness to it. This is a pretty good way to do it. And it'll just make it all that much more realistic when Maya actually goes to render the object. I might add a few edge loops just to harden this for grins. All right, so does that answer your question about like clipping these through each other?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so let me see. What am I clicking? All right, so let me do... Actually, first let me just look at your textures. Whoa. Best name ever. Incredibly confusing. I have no idea what I'm looking at, but that's amazing. Alright, so you were trying to make this clear, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, I was trying to make it somewhat transparent, in which, like...
Alright, so... Okay. Let me get a render going. Because I'm just going to start fiddling with settings and seeing what happens. And then I think I have an idea of what you were trying to do in here. I am more familiar with how to implement that in Redshift than I am in Arnold, but I think I can probably fudge something. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to... So it looks like your weight map is pretty much at this point just a ramp of 1 to 1. So there might not really be a super huge point of having that actually be mapped, if that makes sense. Since you're pretty much just feeding it a value of 1. So like if I'm going to break this connection, and it doesn't super seem to change the surface of that object. It also actually makes it clearer, which is weird. And let's see, what do you have? Top bulb spec. Wait, source images. Bulb spec 2? Oh wait, that was color. No. I see. Okay, so this is... Okay, so you have the top of the bulb and the bottom of the bulb on the same texture?
Yes.
Okay. Ah. Oh, the lag. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, so... Go with the insert edge loop tool. Terrible. Alright, select the object, there we go. Alright, so this bulb surface, and then this is also... Oh, okay. Oh, okay, no, so that's a different... Okay. Oh, I see, is that little bit in here is the other part on the texture. Okay. I might have just made that a separate texture because I'm lazy. But the way you have it is totally fine. It's just going to make it a little bit harder to modify the textures. So I think what I might have done... you know what, I would say probably it would be easier to actually just make this as a new material for the light bulb itself. So I'm just going to throw on a standard surface shader in Arnold, which actually doesn't look terrible if it's like you're just looking for a white bulb. And then if I wanted to make that clear, I would just turn the transmission all the way up to 1. And you can see that now there's like a little bit of refraction of like distortion from this light bulb where it is actually like see-through and transparent and reflecting the stuff behind it, which is I think more what you were looking for, probably. And then if you look at this, you'll notice that like most of the times if you look through a clear light bulb, it's going to be significantly less weird about distorting the geometry behind it. To fiddle with that, you usually just go under the specular tab and fiddle with IOR, which is index of refraction. And usually if you set that slightly lower, it will make that distortion a little bit less aggressive. So now you can you can see much more clearly through this bulb. And then if you wanted to play with then you can fiddle with your roughness. If you wanted sort of like a frosted glass look, which actually looks really neat with the light behind it, but is like totally not what you're going for. But yeah, I mean, so you can fiddle with roughness, stuff like that. But usually if I need to make glass, this is just sort of like the quick and dirty way that I'll make said glass. Are there any other lights in your scene besides this point light in here?
There's an area light.
Okay. I guess that does make sense. Ooh, I appreciate the organization. All right, cool. And then there's a point light hanging out. All right, so strictly speaking, if you're rendering with Arnold, it's probably better to use an Arnold light, which you can just find under the Arnold menu. Just go to lights, and then you would use an area light from there, unless that's what you did. But it's okay, different icon. So yeah, so I would use the Arnold lights for your stuff, because again, if you're using a specific rendering engine, then they have lights made to work specifically with that rendering engine. They're probably going to yield better results and maybe even render a little bit more efficiently. So that is why I would say that. So I think what you probably want to look at here is actually, so I'm just going to, I'll hide that point light. All right, cool. So this is what we're left with into render. What you probably want is a mesh light, which again, I've set up mesh lights in RenderMan more than I have in Arnold, so this might go kind of wonky, but I see. Filament base, filament piece, filament piece, helix. I like that you actually added a little helix in. All right, so I'm just gonna combine these guys really quick. What? Combine. There we go. All right, so I just made all the helixes one piece. So they have what's called a mesh light in Arnold, RenderMan, etc. But theoretically, if I have this object selected and then I go to Arnold Lights Mesh Light, it should theoretically turn that object into a surface that is actually emitting light. Which, again, may or may not work. I fiddled with this much more in RenderMan than I have in Arnold, but you should be able to go through and twiddle some settings in here and then have that surface actually glow. Let's set this to intensity of like 100 or 1,000. That works too. Bless you indeed. I see. All right, so you can see, if I set the intensity up like stupidly high, you can see that it does have like the reflection in the glass here, and it is clearly emitting light. Who, what, where? Yes. Good. Good things. Thank you. Yeah. Most of the time, if I'm rendering, it's for animations, and I'm like, RenderMan, it's fast, yay! Or Redshift. But yeah, so this is a really ugly mesh light. But yeah, I might actually just go in and like add some more light to the scene. I like this incredibly specific number of like 12048.192. But yeah, because usually, what happens if I set that to like a horribly high number? But yeah, so I might just maybe brighten that light a little bit, and then add a mesh light to that. You could also probably fudge it a little bit more. If you added like, you can actually add an area light, and if you there's a setting somewhere, light shape. So if you in the area light, you can actually set that to be like a disc or a cylinder. So you could conceivably just like make a cylindrical area light in your scene that would kind of emit like a light in a circle, basically. So that would like also be something to maybe consider if you were trying to like fudge your lighting really, really hard. But yeah, I can look more into that later. But I think if you were mostly, I would just like maybe make a new glass texture and fiddle with that a little bit. If you ever wanted to so one thing you can do if you ever want to like put text on like a clear surface like this light bulb, just go in and throw in a map on the transmission. So if I make this I'll just throw out a checker texture. You can see that it pretty much applied some white areas to the outside and then left some of these areas clear as if there was maybe a sticker or something on top of the light bulb. And then if you wanted to, the white area is white, not because the checker texture is white, it's just because the base color of the object is white. If I set this to blue, then these would end up being blue. But yeah, so, I don't know, does that sort of answer your question? Kind of-ish? If you want to pursue it, mostly probably just look into mesh lighting. But yeah, so any more questions about this particular assignment? All right then. Anyone else want to volunteer their project? All right, going down to random selection, which is like kind of fun. I feel like whenever I do this, I'm like, ooh, like who's my next random victim? It's like kind of amusing in like the worst way possible. All right, yay, vintage cans. Oh wait, week 5. Oh, yeah, well, that was last week. Okay, so first thought, renders are the wrong size. Also really, really dark. Also, is this week's assignment? Or was this, because this assignment was to add custom textures and this is adding UV map, unless you were being snarky and actually textured it like a UV map, which would be kind of funny in the worst way possible. Okay, no. Alright, yeah, so yeah. So the assignment this week, I don't know if this was like the wrong file that got submitted or whatever, but this is the assignment from like 2 weeks ago. Wait, unless today's week 6, shaders, okay, yeah. The one thing I will say, so, happens to be, since it has the default UVs on the top of this. If you guys ever have like weird stretching in the model like this, like you'll notice if I click this, like all these edges in here like really, really bowed, super crazy. And it's also causing a bunch of texture distortion where the squares are getting kind of smushed in or stretched out a little bit. You can fix that kind of stretching by just adding in extra edge loops to your model. So like if I just go to Insert Edge Loop tool, I'll throw in an edge loop pretty close to this edge here. And that'll basically snap the texture to where it's supposed to be and more or less prevent the stretching. So if I go back in, I'll add more loops on the other sides of this. And you'll notice that the texture stretching is pretty much not an issue anymore. I mean, there's definitely like the UVs on the top. I recognize these as like my default UVs or whatever that I left on here, but you can see it pretty much fixes most of the really extreme stretching that was around the edges. The same thing also goes for down here. So if you just go through and just like add another extra edge loop close to that edge, it'll fix some of that stretching. And then same thing here and over here, etc. But yeah, so any questions about fixing stretching with edge loops? Alrighty then. Any other volunteers, mohaha? I'm so bummed that Halloween only comes once a year. Like, I'm not gonna lie, last quarter, I don't know why I'm talking about Halloween right now, but last quarter I came in like a terrifying mask and scared the crap out of all my students, and it was awesome. Cat doll. Yes. My god, that's adorable. It's so creepy, but so cute. Yeah, so I mean, anyone have any thoughts and comments about this? Yes. I like the angles of the renders. They're like...
It's supposed to be furry, but I've been deceived.
What?
It's supposed to be a furry plushie.
Yeah. Well, this is actually one reason I recommended against doing. I had a few people like try to do plushies for their final project, and I'm like, you don't want to do the fur, trust me. Because yeah, I mean, as you figured out, fur is like kind of a pain in the ass to texture. But no, I mean, I think overall this looks really good. I like that you have these seam lines in here. either textured or modeled in, I can't tell, but it's also really nice that you took the time to go in and sort of mimic how the embroidery on the eyes was created. I don't know if you guys can see that on the projector, but there's like tiny lines. If you wanted to be really, really nitpicky about it, this looks like how an actual eyes would be embroidered, but like this down here, I've worked with embroidering on fancy sewing machines before. What they would probably do is like sew a patch for this nose and then run a bunch of stitches in a curved line to sort of like make this edge, or it would just go back and forth like really, really aggressively like this. But again, not something I'm really like nitpicking or caring about, just like weird stuff like that to keep in mind if you're ever doing stuff for like a portfolio piece or something, where like that kind of extra little detail, just like getting the stitches to be accurate is like recruiters or like people from companies notice that kind of nonsense. But yeah, I mean, I think overall this looks pretty nice. I think the biggest issue with it, I guess, that I would see is just the texturing of the fur, which is again like not your fault. It's just like it's really a pain, and it's really, really annoying to texture fur, especially if you don't have like a displacement map. But it's like actually annoying to do. But I think overall this reads pretty nicely, and it looks like I think this is a model where I was like, yeah, like maybe cut the seam on the paws or whatever up here, and it looks like that was done. But yeah, I mean, I think overall this looks pretty cute. I think the renders look nice. The angles of the renders are kind of fun. But yeah, I think this turned out pretty well. Any other comments before I select another random person? Alrighty then. Also, you should 100% set this as your computer background. This is like weirdly. Anyway. All right, who have I not terrorized yet? And again, if anyone ever wants to go over their project specifically, just let me know.
I have a question regarding the project.
Okay.
I have a question about this homework.
Okay.
Can you open my DM?
Sure. Yeah. Just unzipping as we speak. Aha. It unzips so fast. Cool. M. Alrighty then. Sardines. Nice. Okay, so what was your question?
So, like, when I'm taking renders from different angles, like, in some cases, I'm just getting the white plain can, like, no colors at all, because of the reflection by the walls.
Okay.
Yeah, so how do you stop it? Like, if I just remove the walls, like this time I just took I just rotated the object for different views. I didn't rotate the, like, camera. Yeah, so, like, I don't know how to stop the reflection from the walls.
Gotcha. I mean, you probably can't really stop the reflection of the walls. You probably could if you really wanted to, but I think probably the better thing to do would be to add in either an HDRI, which gives you like a fake background in here, and it would give you more like interesting things to reflect that besides just like a white wall kind of thing. Like I can see here, this looks like it might just be the light itself casting like a really, really bright hot spot on this can. But yeah, so either add in HDRI would give some more interesting reflections, or you could also just like model in some other geometry or put like a random texture on your wall, and that would also give it something else to reflect. I can open. Also, I like the ridiculous textures you put on here, like expired. Quite funny.
The text which is like written at the bottom is like more fun. I think. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Like on every side, I think there's some text written with the star sign.
Okay.
The terms and condition thing. Like, yeah, that is very small, but yeah.
Okay. Wait. I must know now. Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, the picture that.
Did you make this?
No.
Okay.
I could have.
Yeah. No, I feel you. Nice.
It was just the photo.
Yeah. Nice. I think I also found the scratch texture and used it for something. But yeah, I can open, do you want me to open your Maya file and like just see what happens if I throw like an HDRI or something in here?
Yeah, it is in scenes folder.
Yep. Gotcha. Let's see. Nice. All right. Okay. So while I'm here, before I relink up your textures, actually, I can't relink your textures. All right. So, random note about rendering and submitting your project folders again. So when you're mapping your textures into Maya, like when you actually go onto your computer and like select where the file is, the file should already be in your project folder when you do that. So usually if you start a new project, the project folder is like the first thing you're going to set up, and then you're just going to add everything into there as you go. So right now if you look at this, yeah, it's a direct path to a file on your computer. So if I were to like open this on my computer, it's not going to be able to find that file because I do not have the same information. But yeah, so that's like on texturing assignments when I ask for project folders, that's usually why I ask for the project folder, because like ideally I'd be able to open it and like everything would sort of know where it was. And then in this case, I'll just have to go back in and like relink all the textures. And it actually, I don't have any of your final textures in the textures folder. It's just the individual, like the sardine and the expired stamp and stuff, and the scratch texture. So I don't actually have any of your like color maps. You're kind of fine. If you do a resubmit on the project anyway, then like throw in the updated folders, but you don't need to resubmit it if it's just for the texture files. I can see that you like clearly added texture files. Anywho, so I'm just gonna, yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna render this and see what we get here. All right. This is actually gonna be a really terrible demonstration because I don't have any texture files. All right, let me really quick here. I'll just map in color. Oh, interesting. You mapped the color specular. All right. So I'm just going to, yeah, actually, I don't think I can super look at this terribly well without more of your texture files. There's nothing off the top of my head that looks like completely ridiculous about this, but if I come up here and where's your, what is this? Oh. Oh, I see what you did. Okay. And you actually lit it manually. Interesting. All right, so actually, okay, yeah, cool. I assumed that this was going to be a HDRI image in the background, but it's actually just a thing. That's cool. It probably makes more sense if you're using Arnold to use the Arnold lights again, but all good. So I'm just gonna really quick throw in a sky dome light, and I think I have somewhere on my flash drive. Probably stop this render. Alright. And really wish I could search here. Wood text. Sure. Alright, so I just found a random HDRI that I have. I'm actually fairly certain that just did a horrible job of rendering that in your can. All right, and then I'm just gonna hide these directional lights really quick. But you can kind of see, I mean, it just gives like a little bit of a different look maybe. And then if this object were a little bit, it's actually pretty interesting. I would actually expect this to be much more, much more reflective than it is. But yeah, but I mean, like adding something like this in might help a little bit with the reflections on the background. Perhaps if I physically rotated this HDR, I would give. Oh, okay, yeah, that's a pretty. Where did I put my Maya thing? I lost my render view. That's irritating. But yeah, so I mean, but yeah, so theoretically, just like adding some extra stuff would help with the reflections, but I can't super troubleshoot if I don't have your file textures. But yeah, so does anyone else have any other questions about this assignment or want to volunteer their own assignment? Yes.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
When I put in my textures on the CAD, but then when I rendered it, the textures weren't there.
Weird. Yeah, I can look at that.
I didn't even submit it because I feel like, what was the point of that?
Right. I mean, I can still look at your Maya file, or like send me screenshots proving you did it. But yeah, I can look at that really quick. Why? When? Oh, I guess you didn't submit. That makes. I was like, where's your files? And you literally just said you didn't. Sorry. Yeah, I can look at that. I guess after class. But yeah. So anyone else want to volunteer their assignment? All right. In that case, I'm picking one more random one, and then we're gonna go on to other things. Ooh. I haven't actually seen anyone. I know some people did a business card. I just like haven't seen any yet. I'm excited. Oh my god. For the first one I read this, I thought it said self-important and I laughed really. Anywho, incidentally, this is actually a pretty good way to camouflage like the edge of the table here, because it, like, you have other tables in the background and it sort of blends in as like just a table in your scene. So that was like pretty nicely done. In terms of the actual texture, I think it looks like one of the maps, possibly the bump map, might be a little bit extreme. Because it makes it really, really hard to see the text. Like the back I think looks pretty good. It looks like though, there was like just sort of a texture applied to this and then it sort of stops up here because everything else is really worn and then this is like perfect. But I actually like this a lot where you have like the sort of scratching. It looks like that thing if you've ever like had a cat or other pet just like claw at a piece of paper and they just sort of scratch the top layer off and then just leave like white underneath. Like it totally has that effect, which I think is pretty neat looking. But yeah, so I think most of this would just be maybe like take a little more care with where the textures for the scratches and stuff end. And then I think the bump map on the front is like also a little bit super extreme. I really want to know what this says on the inside, because it looks like, oh wait, no. I can't tell if that's the same. Oh my god. No, okay. Sorry. For some reason when I looked at this, I thought it was like a card, like a happy birthday card or something like that, and I'm like, oh, it's two business cards stacked on top. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, I was like, why is the back of this the same thing? Okay, yeah. So I think if that's... Okay. Yeah, so I think mostly it just looks like some of the maps are a little bit aggressive, especially with like the bump and the scratches. But it looks like there's a cool kind of design on it with like the text and the shells and stuff, but yeah. Anyone else have any other thoughts on this? All right then. Cool. In that case, are there any other questions about